We messed up your name.
Dude, what do you want from me?
You were right there.
I know, bro.
Which take was it?
21. 21st take. We will get started in a few moments. In the next roughly 10 minutes we'll be starting. Quick overview. This will be an interactive character sheet maker. Essentially what we're going to do is we're going to have a great back and forth. Essentially teach you guys how to make a D&D character without all the nonsense and jargon and having to look at a super long, gross piece of paper. It's going to be really fun and we hope you guys enjoy. Thank you for coming.
Walls of text are intimidating.
They are.
Dude, they stole a projector. We needed that. Oh my god. We were told we were gonna have a projector because we're gonna project these little dudes so everyone can see it. I mean, they didn't get it. It's okay. Yeah.
We'll make it work.
We'll make it work.
I saw the engineer coordinator look at the sign. I thought he was gonna come in, join us. But I think he was looking and going, "Who put this sticker on?" We're like, well, our
We weren't working.
Yeah. They let us do that.
So they're like, cool. Now we don't have to show you guys out. It's like, oh, great.
Comes Christian. Dude, it actually is.
Anyone want to start with basic, just about ourselves, common introductions? Start at one end.
Yeah, I'm Vince. I've been playing D&D for, 4 years now? Yeah, we're going on 4 years playing D&D. It's a very fun game. I like that you kind of make your own elements of it. You don't really have to rely on somebody else to do it, essentially. It's kind of, he's our DM for the game that we're currently running. So he kind of makes the world, and then we're all the characters in it.
I'm Sid. I have been playing D&D for about the same time, a little bit longer than your campaign started.
Yeah,
so January 2019, and I really like just building characters. I just like creating my own story for my one person, and then just interacting with the world around me. It doesn't always add up.
Hi, my name's Omar. You got a little
We didn't expect that,
but I've been playing D&D probably since 2018. I got into, I don't know if you guys know Critical Role, but they're super big, yeah. So I got into campaign 2, I think, and I was like, oh, this is awesome. I jumped right into it. I started playing online games, so on Roll20 and all types of stuff. And then
sometime in 2019, yeah, roughly
one shot.
Yeah.
And then after that, it's just been playing D&D forever.
To translate some of the terms we've been using, hi, I'm Israel, I'm the Dungeon Master, or essentially the one who starts the story. I make the world, the characters they'll interact with, the adventures, and really the plot hooks that they'll be following throughout their overall arcs of the campaign. A campaign is a compiled list of different stories, all in one. It could be something as simple as, I need you to help me find my horses, or something as great as there's an evil lurking in the depths of the abyss ocean, something like that. It can be, something heartfelt, trying to get back home, or it can be something silly, like we found a goose in a cave, it really can be anything you want it to be, and that's probably one of the most rewarding parts about being a DM is making these stories, and not just being able to tell them, but having players that will, of course, enjoy them, or you can yell at them until they do, what really works, so. With that being said,
have you guys played D&D before?
Yeah, it's just nuts.
Yeah. Yeah, we were talking about
we were explaining. I'm explaining.
You two haven't really? You guys are just curious about
One shot.
Okay.
Nice. What'd you play in the one shot?
Dwarf Warrior.
Nice. Classic. Nice. And then you said you played once, right? What'd you play?
Yeah, we did the starter set.
Oh, that's
Okay.
right.
Yeah.
What did you pick a character or did you make one?
I played the noble.
Oh, the noble?
The
Yes,
noble.
I do know what you're talking about.
Yeah. We set the forest on fire.
Oh,
We try to give a kid a
It
weapon.
happens,
Try to give a kid a weapon. That happens all the time, actually.
Yeah.
Trying to arm your NPCs.
He wasn't happy to see. He just walked up to you see a kid and what? Hey kid, you want
It's a perfect response. Kid comes up to me, hey, how you doing? Hey, here you go.
It's all chaotic,
Enjoy.
first time DM.
Oh, yeah.
I'm off guard.
That's definitely one of the most interesting parts of DMing is just what you really will allow your players to do, but it's so much more rewarding. It's just are you sure you want to do this? Yeah, let's do it. Okay, have fun with that.
It's fun because you can kind of guide them, but they're probably still going to make the same stupid decision.
Yeah.
It's the context and tone of the voice, it's just Yes, you want to go down this pathway? Oh yeah, no problem. Are you sure? Like, there's another doorway. You know, like it's
You can go left or right.
there are options.
He
You know?
lost the fight against the goblins.
Oh
my
god!
God.
That cave is rough. That's a bad cave. I lost one of my.
We didn't make it to the cave. We got jumped.
At the wagon.
At the wagon.
Oh no.
Horrible rolls.
Yeah.
I feel that.
I did that story adventure for a group online. At that, there's this scene where your party is going along this trail and there's a wagon that's overturned. There's like blood everywhere. So your players, you're like, oh, I gotta investigate. So investigate. There's like 4 goblins hiding in bushes and stuff. So they start attacking. They down one of my players, but he lives. So they track him down to this like goblin cave. There's like 50 of them. But I dropped it down to 15. They only had 4 health points. I was being generous. But they got swarmed and they all rolled super bad. I lost one of my players. I was like, oh no. It was the first session in. I was like, oh no.
Was that the first combat?
It was a second combat.
That's not much better.
Of the first.
Second combat of the first session.
Oh.
I think that's
He
worse.
went down and then a dog bit him in the ankle and bled out.
I think that's genuinely worse because like you get your first combat under your belt, you're like, yeah, I did. I take on the world.
Alright, we got that one.
Second one, nope, I'm done. I'm tapping out.
It's worse when it's your first one. You just down.
Alright.
Yeah, he's a new player, so you learn quickly not to mess with goblins.
It's always fun to have those like very serious stoic characters, you know. It's just like, oh yes, I will be Dryden the Brave, and I will clear the mountaintop of this dragon. But also, like, we ran the adventure module one time. I remember. Do you recall it was me, you, and Nolan? And you remember your characters?
Super late at night.
It was, but Vince's character, I will never forget this, was the estranged half brother of one Van Helsing. And you called him Dan Helsing. No relation. And
Oh
I
my
was
gosh,
just
yeah, and then he's the actual brother of Van Helsing, but legally he was sued, and so he has to say he's no relation to Van Helsing.
It's just the silly stuff like that that you can add into your character, you know, just to not only break away from the seriousness. Not every campaign has to be like this, like Lord of the Rings, Tolkien-esque
High
thing.
fantasy.
Yeah, high fantasy.
Kind of weighted, yeah.
It's just really about knowing what you want to play and bring to the table, and also kind of communicating with your DM and seeing, you know, where this will best fit. I have found plenty of stories where a character like Pippi the Toad, who's like juggling and throwing things around, might not be the best in the blood caverns of hell, but you know, we figure it out, you know.
But also, sometimes you get some of the coolest character arcs out of that character,
Oh,
because they end up being like the most like
They're the
they
only one who lives.
you know, sacrifice themselves for everyone or something, and you're like,
Oh yeah. All right.
This is on the
Oh wow, right on the money.
No.
Oh.
right team.
All right, team. I gotta stand up. Exactly what I hate doing. Without further ado, hello to all us uncommon travelers out there. This is, of course, the Tea with Tea&D. We are Tea&D. So short for Tea and D. And we will be showing you guys today how to make a D&D character. With that being said, the minor introductions really quick. I mean, you already kind of get a feel for us, but I know we have some other introductions to go about. So starting out.
like I said, I'm Vince. Currently in the campaign we're playing on YouTube. My character's name is Locte Goldenmane, who is a Leonin paladin, which we'll get into more detail on that. But he is a paladin of the demigod of wealth. So his kind of main thing is spreading wealth.
I'm Sid, and I play Savant, who is a Hexblade Warlock Asmar, so out of order, I'm sorry. And he's a guy who's been around for a really long time, and his path, to put it vaguely, his past is coming up to bite him in the butt.
My name is Omar, as the placard says. I play a half-elf wizard named Dieter Urmacher. And he's a pretty cool guy. He's an old dude. He got transported in time, so he was in the past, I was in the future. Lots of time heisty stuff.
And as I said before, I'm of course the DM. I am anywhere as major as an evil villain trying to thwart them, or you know, a rock that they hope to talk to on the side of the road. You know, anything in between as well.
Sometimes it works.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. Yay! Let's take it from the top. What is a character sheet? It's this whole mess. It's a bunch of writing, letters, numbers, stats, spells, just jargon. It's a lot, and especially for your first time looking at it, it can be daunting, it can be deterring, and it just really has some things that aren't too important for your first time playing, so we don't want to waste time, of course, just focusing too much on those aspects of it, because it can be overwhelming. And at the end of the day, you really just want to play the game for fun and enjoyment, not pulling out a calculator and wondering, is this deductible for my taxes? So we're going to skip from the character sheet aspect of it first. We're going to go to one of the first / last parts of making a character, and that is, of course, the name. The name is a bit of a controversial one. We all have our own different ways of naming things. Of course, since I'm the DM, I have to come up with hundreds upon hundreds of different names. Sometimes when it comes to me naming certain characters, I like having some form of impact. I like having characters that are memorable. I like having characters that you'll want to come back to, not only because of their actions, but because it's fun to say their names. I've had characters such as Vorpus Grag, Inatari Inkblood, who else we got? General Coruscant, like characters that just flow really well and sound interesting. And you're like, okay, what else can they do? And then they go into a town and they're like, oh man, we need some supplies. Who's that guy? And I'm like, his name's Doug, the farmer, and he has grain, and you know, like stuff like that. Everyone has their own different ways of naming things and different times of naming things. So, if you guys want to explain what your methods are?
For me, I like to make a character and then name it. I like to kind of have an idea of their personality, what they might be like. Because I feel like most people that I meet, they tell me their name, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I see that, you know. So I definitely like to try to capture that energy of like, this person is that name.
I also tend to name my character like after I build them entirely, because like to me the name is the most important thing, and I think I'm pretty good at naming, not just but I will typically go on like a fantasy name generator, and I'll just look through like all the names, and I'll take like elements of each name that I like and then just turn them into a name, or I'll do all that and then just completely ignore it and then name my character Savant because he's good at things.
So my character, Dieter Urmacher, there's lots of different ways you can name your character or build a character, but the way I do it typically is I'll have an idea of a character and then I'll work on it. So my character Dieter, he's a clockmaker, so Dieter is a German name, so I like to do accents as well. I think it's fun, you know, so German accent, like a British accent, it's a fun, silly little RPG. But Urmacher means clockmaker in German, so it all fits together.
All the cogs match.
All the cogs.
It all comes back.
Clock reference.
If you guys have any names that you would like, because again,
we're making a character.
We are
so we're all gonna
your character. So whatever names that just come off the top of your head, we'll write them down. Anyone.
Doesn't have to be serious.
Yeah.
Was it?
I'm so bad at it.
So bad at it.
I think one of my first characters.
That's a weird
called Tall Midget.
Oh god, I don't know what that
A little problematic.
let's do something orcish. So bad. S-O and then -B-A-D. So bad.
That sounds like something I would do.
I also I'm really hungry, so put Tyson, like the chicken that and this is generally the process. I'll be at my desk and I'll just be like looking around and I'm like, pencil, penicillus. You know, Pegasus, you know, it just comes. Penicillin. Nailed it.
It's like a game of telephone until you come up with the right name.
The most heart-wrenching and worst experience is when you come up with a name that you're really proud of, and then it's just like, ha, I got this one in the bag. And then you say it in front of the party, and just everyone starts laughing, and you're like, oh. There goes, there goes that guy.
Or like that one character from, and then you're like, oh, I stole it without knowing I stole it.
Oh yeah,
yeah, that happens.
I'm like, wow, this is such a great character name, and I'm like reading a book, and I'm like, oh wait, I already took it from this book.
That I never read.
It's like, I'm not original, but I didn't know I wasn't.
There's this like weird internal guilt about it, because you're like, I didn't know I stole it, but I stole it, and that's what matters.
I'm completely fine with having 8 different Johns, but the moment I go with like, I don't know, Tiberius is the moment I'm like, that one's gone. I'm sorry. So again, with names, we can of course start or end with them. We'll just see how the character shapes out and really go from there. So the first thing we're going to of course cover will of course be the races.
All
So we're
right.
off to the races.
So there's a lot of races. Oh my god. There's a lot of races in D&D, but we're gonna focus on a couple and we'll go from there. So for example, number 1, that's a Dragonborn. So Dragonborns are like human dragon people basically. They're tall, like 7 feet tall, they breathe fire, and there's different types. So there's like snow, fire, metal, just all types of cool stuff. Another one we got are Kobolds. So imagine tall dragon people to tiny little lizard people, like 2 feet tall. They're mischievous, like to steal things. I play one, he's pretty fun. Next we have gnomes. So think of gnomes as short tinkerers. They like to work with their hands, like to make stuff. They're they're brainiacs. Next we have orcs. So orcs, they're tall, muscular, heroic, stoic. They're all about fighting and all types of stuff. Your character, you can decide what he wants.
It could be a guard.
Next we got Jeff. So Jeff is your normal human. There's no humans in D&D tend to get sidelined. Not a lot of people like to go for humans because we're humans. We want to play something cool. We don't want to play ourselves.
Like Jeff.
Like Jeff.
Jeff here would not play a human.
Yeah, Jeff would actually play a tiefling, which is this. So tieflings are hellish races. They have horns, have a tail. Don't feel like a purple character. This is your guy. They're pretty fun. Next we have little feral elf. So this represents elves. So think of Lord of the Rings. Elrond, high elf, 20 years, super long living. Wise to their age.
I was about to say.
Next we got dwarves. So dwarves being like Lord of the Rings, like Gimli, stoic, proud, shorts, live in mountains, like to mine. Next we have kobolds. These are shorter red kobolds. They're mischievous, like to kill people. We'll skip on them. Kind of bad. Next we got goblins. So goblins are sort of akin to orcs. Shorter, mischievous.
Like to steal.
They like to steal.
Greedy.
They got gold.
Greedy. They got gold. Oh, he's gone. Oh my god. Another example. So we have centaurs. So centaurs are a playable race in D&D. So you're going to be a half human, half horse, and gallop around with a giant sword. You can.
You can switch it up too. You can have the head of a horse, the body of a man.
Yeah.
People switch it up as well. It's pretty cool. They also apparently hate goblins.
Last we got another kobold.
So Omar, what race do you like?
So I like kobolds.
Tying into your guys' own characters, we've actually kind of named a few of them. Starting from the top, you said the Leonin was one of them. If you want to go into detail.
So Leonins are like humanoid lions. They stand on two legs and everything like that, but pretty much everything about them feature-wise is a lion.
And I play an Asmar, which is a humanoid person with celestial blood, and how else to describe it? They're
It's like a demigod.
yeah, they're like demigods.
Like Percy Jackson type stuff.
Typically lawful.
And then
Like I said, I play half elf. So half elf just means half human, half elf. They made a baby, and I can.
yeah, plenty of variety of races. One of the best parts about DMing is also just how many different races you can put in different areas, maybe explaining where certain races came from, originated from. So for instance, one of the islands that we have close to the south is mostly reptilian. So you got your lizard folks, your dragonborns, your turtles, which are humanoid turtles, and yes, you even have kobolds there as well. So we got a great variety of different races in certain areas, and then they all meet and culminate in a good old stew pot of different races, giving great diversity. Were there any races that maybe stood out to you guys that we can add to our character sheet? And we'll take any. Tiefling. The tiefling?
Yeah, these are pretty cool.
Who made the presentation?
We all did. So we all given slides.
I'm the DM for.
Yeah. I'm an idea guy.
This is very similar to my presentation.
Yeah, it's very given middle school.
I was making the
Very middle
presentation.
school.
I was making the presentation with the mindset of God, I haven't made one of these since high school. And then when I was putting it together, I was thinking who would attend. And I'm God, some of these people might still be in high school. They might have class tomorrow. I can't run too late. So races, with that being said, are of course these physical qualities. They have their own various traits. So in the case of a tiefling, they will be naturally resistant to fire. They will be able to do something called hellish rebuke, which is if someone hurts them, they can then do it back immediately. They just shoot off this burst of fire, which will then cause a sort of recoil to whoever has harmed them before. They can speak a variety of different languages, such as the most common language, which, take a guess, it's called Common. And they also can know a language known as Infernal, or the language of devils. With that being said, races are the great foundation for building a character in general, but they are supported by the next feature, which is of course classes. So let's actually segue into classes.
Good luck, yeah. I might not make it. So classes, I'm gonna say classy. So we have a ton of classes. We have barbarians, kind of the average brute, very strong, can do a lot of damage, can take a lot of damage. You got bards, they channel magic through music. They usually attend a college to specialize in a specific zone of it. You have clerics. Clerics are kind of a good overall character. They do healing, they can do a lot of damage. They can take a lot of damage. You got druids. They are mostly nature magic, oftentimes linked with animals, plants, everything like that. They can transform into animals, speak with animals, things like that. You got the fighter, kind of the most default class. They fight with weapons. They either have, one weapon, two weapons, weapon and a shield, something along those lines.
No weapons.
You got the monk. Oftentimes they use unarmed strikes. They use a life force called ki to empower those strikes or to make themselves move faster, jump higher, things like that. We got the paladin. Paladin oftentimes tanks, can heal. They usually, like you see here, have a shield and a weapon. Oftentimes very hard to hit them. You have the ranger. You can think of these as like the best hunters in the land. Oftentimes really good at tracking, use ranged weapons, sometimes have animal companions. You have the rogue, very sneaky, tries to stealth most of the time, oftentimes has skills such as stealing, breaking into places, deceiving people. You have the sorcerer. Sorcerers, their magic comes from lineage, so bloodline is passed down through their family. You have warlocks. Warlocks, they will make a pact with an otherworldly patron, kind of similar to paladins, but it's more self-service. They're looking to gain powers themselves, whereas paladins are just kind of doing it out of, willing for their deity. And then you have wizards. They're very focused on knowledge. They too, kind of similar to bards, go to a college that specializes their magic, and they usually have a little spell book, and that's how they cast their spells.
A great way to think of also with classes is how you want to play the character in terms of mechanics. So if you want to play something that's more about punching and hitting, dealing a lot of damage, you're most likely going to be looking for something called a DPS, or damage per second in most video games or things like that. Essentially something similar to a barbarian, a fighter, a monk, but that's not to say that things like, for instance, a bard can't be dealing a lot of damage. It's just there are certain aspects of building a character that specialize in certain aspects, which you sometimes consider, but also I've seen characters or players pick characters that aren't necessarily, quote, optimized. They just want to play a character because it sounds fun to them. Like maybe you enjoy aspects of shipping in animals with a druid, or maybe you enjoy the fact that you can use spell books as a wizard. There's a bunch of different variety when it comes to picking a class, and I know there's a bunch of variety when it comes to the classes here at the table. So Vince, you were talking about a wealth paladin earlier.
So I'm a paladin of the demigod of wealth, Damatar, which is actually a homebrew deity that Israel came up with. Essentially, very generous. They are bestowed, gifts of wealth from the demigod of wealth to disperse to those in need.
So I play warlock, and to keep it vague, since they don't really know much about my character still, we'll talk about that later. Basically, I made a deal with a patron, and I get to curse people, and I have this sword that I'm bound to, and that's where all my magic is.
I play a wizard. So with classes, there's also subclasses. So no two wizards are the same. So my subclass for wizard is chronergy or chronomancy. It deals with time. So my whole stake is I'm trying to find my family because I got TP in the future.
Trying to figure out the magic.
Trying to figure out the magic.
Your class?
Oh, no, I will well. There are plenty of classes I can share. One of the ones I think that definitely stuck with the party was a bard. A bard in particular. Typically, bards are seen as very exuberant, very high energy, very fast. They're very much in your face, playing a lute, telling you to give them money. And I don't know, I wanted to slow it down a little bit. I wanted someone that I really enjoyed musically, but also a character that I would enjoy playing and kind of not holding their hand, but accompanying them on a journey. So I took inspiration from different jazz artists and different performers, and I came up with the idea of a turtle, so a turtle man, old sort of jazz folk singer. Who he's maybe in his 70s or 80s, not your typical bard, he's about retired at this point. Really much more old-timey talk, he goes on these long rambling tangents, and he could talk your ear off all day. Let me tell you something, see. I won't. And you know, it just kind of gets into a flow with those sorts of characters based on, of course, their class or race. And this was a character that really wasn't optimized. You know, I could have obviously gone, oh yeah, let's put this race with this class and make a character that does like a billion get. But like at the end of the day, I enjoy mostly just making the silly voice and make my players laugh. So that's what I really enjoyed. But if there's any classes that you guys might have noticed that stood out to you, please just shout them out. Anyone?
Rogue.
A rogue, okay. Okay. Now we're cooking with gas. This is a pretty cool character. This is a pretty cool character. I really Tiefling rogue. So next up, we're going to be discussing backgrounds. We're going to do a quick background check. Social security. I got the backgrounds.
I gave you my
keep going. So backgrounds, where we've talked about race, which is of course us, just not us as humans, us as any of these fantasy characters in terms of identity. Class is best described as mechanics or abilities that you'll be expressing in the game. Backgrounds are best set as occupations, fields, or just who you are in society or in the world is the best way I can describe it. So in a background in real life would be like, okay, I'm a teacher, I'm a writer, or I'm a panelist. There you go. There's different backgrounds you can go with. So I just kind of threw a few up here. We got, archaeologists. Maybe your character's whole thing is they're looking for a lost treasure, or maybe a missing city, something simple like that. Maybe they're a hermit. Maybe they live in isolation all their lives because society has abandoned them, or maybe they just enjoy the quiet life. They like the simpler things. It could be something like a knight. Maybe they take their own oath of valor, not to a god or a patron, but to their country or to their king or queen or the land itself. They could be someone like a bandit or a thief. Maybe you don't want to necessarily play a traditionally good character. Maybe you just want to, steal some money. Maybe you want to, rob a bank or something from time to time. It's really whatever you wish when it comes to a background. It has probably some of the most diverse ideas in general, just because of how flexible and how expressive your world can be. And finally, the final background we have is, of course, a spy. So spies are not final in terms of total, just the final one I want to list. So spies, go into enemy lines, get some information, intel, etc. I think there was one more. There's also Kobolds. You got to Kobolds as well. But all jokes aside, backgrounds can be anything from what did you go with for Lockday?
Lockday was, I forget the word.
Wasn't it noble?
Sorry. So his parents were diplomats from a different country. So he was raised in a fairly noble place.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I've mentioned this before. These are not secrets. He was the son of diplomats, so grew up very royally privileged, but then stuff happens,
Life happens. Sid,
Can I be honest?
did you hear your background?
Yes.
It was actually a hermit, funny enough.
It was? Okay, that's what I was thinking.
So many years of isolation.
Hermit, somebody who just wanders and just trying to find themselves in whatever way that doesn't involve other people.
One of the interesting things about a background is you can actually tend to play into a character's background more than you can play into their race and class. So typically when it comes to D&D, I wouldn't necessarily have a character go, oh, you're that fighter everyone's talking about. That seems a little bit too on the nose. So in the case of Sid's character, since they're a hermit, they lived in isolation, not much is really known about them. In the world, we've crafted kind of rumors and namesakes about this very character. So this hermit title has become more of a local legend. So there have been terms such as the wandering swordsman who has managed to cut down trolls with a single slash, or the Bootseman or the boogeyman in German. In this case, it's the fantasy language of Old Krexmian. So a lot of different possibilities when it comes to your background and your background.
So my background, technically it's clan crafter, I think.
Correct.
Went with, but you can read. It's your character. So I remodeled it to clockmaker because that's what my guy does. He fixes clocks, makes clocks.
He makes fake clocks.
He makes fake clocks and he sells them.
Makes real ones.
How does he make a clock? How do those things work?
Clocks. So basically,
Oh, no.
we won't get
And they have a tiny hand on one hand. But yeah, if there's any backgrounds that you guys, they don't have to be these ones. There's just so many different things, if you have ideas, please.
pirates, sailors, merchants, all types of stuff.
First character had a soldier background.
Soldier. Soldier rogue.
Soldier rogue, geez, a lot of interesting possibilities here. A lot to go with. Now here's a big one when it comes to role playing. This is actually probably going to go hand in hand with your background, with your backstory in general, and this might actually sculpt how you're actually going to be playing a character in terms of role play. So shifting away from mechanics and numbers and all that sort of thing. Your alignment is really how you're going to display yourself. How are you going to carry yourself? Are you going to do mostly good actions, or are you going to do mostly not so good actions? So Sid, if you'd like to discuss alignments.
Okay.
Got this.
I'm the only one with a paper.
You're the only one who came prepared.
Okay, so your alignment is divided into, well, 6 different, well, 9, but so you can be either lawful, or you can be neutral, or you can be chaotic, and essentially lawful is to follow the laws or like your fair morals. So with lawful good, that's basically just doing the best for everyone possible within reason and within morals. And so a good example of that would be Wonder Woman. If you have the others, just call them out.
Captain America.
Captain
There you go.
And so for lawful neutral, that's doing anything you feel like, as long as it doesn't like break any laws or offend anyone, I guess. And that, I would say, would be Judge Dredd.
RoboCop.
Oh my god.
A little too lawful for their own good. Let's put it like that.
Yeah. And then lawful evil is just having the mindset that your evil acts are justified because you believe that your morals are good. And I think the best, probably like the poster child of lawful evil would be Thanos.
Yeah, so blinded by your own like ideology and believing that you're going to be doing good when in actuality you're going to be hurting a lot of people. We actually had an antagonist in the campaign previously who said, I want to make sure we have the strongest race possible. Like, I want to make sure the world is as strong as it can be. It's like, great, is it going to be vegetables? Is it going to be fruit? Is it going to be like, muscle milk? No, it's going to be genocide. We're just going to kill off all the weaker people and just let all the strong survive in like this great grand Colosseum gladiator match. And everyone's like, that doesn't sound too right. So that he would fall into that lawful evil category.
And then there's also the neutral category, and neutral is just, I'd say that's doing whatever benefits you, not really following any particular morals. So neutral good is just doing good regardless of who or what it affects. And so I would say Katniss Everdeen is a good example of that. And then true neutral is just doing whatever you want, however you want. So Steve from Minecraft, that's the best we could come up with.
You're surviving.
Yes.
Another great way to consider true neutral is with a lot of these, you might be playing something that you aren't necessarily doing in real life. I mean, I would hope that none of you are, naturally chaotically evil, but you do you, man. With that being said, true neutral really is more so what we like to call self-insert, where you're kind of taking your own mindset, you're going to put it into a character, so that way you can pilot them however you would personally do it.
Yeah, a lot of people tend to do true neutral.
Because it kind of gives you more range. When you pick like a specific, like if you're lawful good, your character that you've created is obligated to act in that manner. So when you want to, maybe do something that's kind of a gray area morally, you may have to change your alignment, which can happen.
Absolutely. It's great to start off as true neutral to begin with, because then you really get to feel like the footing on the character early on and go, okay, maybe I will play this a bit more lawfully, or maybe I do want to be a little mischievous here or there, or, maybe I just want to be like the most brutal, evil character that one can imagine. It's really much more flexible in that way than kind of putting yourself into a position where it's like, I'm going to do good all the time, 24/7, whenever the chance arises, and then you're thrown in a situation that maybe you don't have the best answer for. Maybe it's a situation that you really wish, oh man, I wish I was more flexible about this situation, and wish I could have dipped elsewhere into.
And then we have neutral evil, which is just being evil because I feel like it. So I would say Skeletor.
Any of the classic like 70s/80s like cartoon villains, so like the Shredder, Cobra Commander, it's just like, I want to be evil. Anyone that like overly excessively yells to the extreme, that like just presents himself like, I will rule the world, and can't say why, they're probably falling into the neutral evil category.
And the last category is chaotic. I don't think I really need to elaborate on being chaotic, but it's just to be disruptive. And so for chaotic good is basically just doing good in an extreme way, still morally correct, and Mad Hatter is good for that. And chaotic neutral, pretty sure we all identify as that personally. Chaos for the sake of chaos, Jack Sparrow. And chaotic evil is evil for the sake of chaos, like the Joker.
they just don't make sense. Like, it's kind of the other end of neutral evil where, well, at least with neutral evil, it's them being evil and you're like, okay, you're a bad guy, I need to stop you. Chaotic evil, it's just like, how did you get that bad? You know, like, really? Really, like, that much dynamite? Doesn't that seem like a little too much? You know, like over exuberance amount of evil to a, like, questionable way. You're less so mad and just like, but why? You know, it's really that gray area. So if you guys maybe had any alignments that might have stood out, maybe you guys want to start true neutral and kind of go from there later on, or you know, maybe you guys are like, I will only do good, period. Never any question. That's it.
Chaotic good.
Oh, perfect.
Right.
Oh, where did you guys actually initially start with your? I know where you stand. I know where you stand. That's an interesting one.
Originally?
Yeah.
Well, with my first character, who was a Goliath barbarian named Orcs I started at lawful neutral, I believe, and then eventually shifted to true neutral.
Of course.
I think I stayed there.
And Lockday?
Lockday is actually neutral good because despite being a paladin, his deity is not exactly set by rules, as he's just a demigod of wealth. So he's not really tied by any rules as far as, you know, most deities are like the god of light and good and everything like that. His is just money, so he doesn't necessarily, he's kind of a morally gray character sometimes.
One of the terms Vince actually mentioned earlier, which I think we should elaborate on, is the word homebrew. Homebrew is essentially unofficial content that's made by, you know, members of the community. So I homebrewed, or I made, collaborating with Vince, a whole paladin order devoted to money. In addition to that, it was one of those questions of, okay, what would their, you know, demigod be, or, you know, being that they would worship be. So we came up with a purple Dragonborn who has these very nice silk robes that ties into like a full-on suit. He has these tiny, wiry bifocal glasses that swoop on the front of his nose. Whenever he gets frustrated, he just and like lets out like a puff, like purplish smoke out of his nostrils. Easy to get flustered, but very caring. He very much wants to turn money from a thing that's looked on as only a few can afford this luxury and provide it to everyone. Provide it so people have, you know, the food they need, or a place to stay, or comfort in the fact that he has so much wealth to share with people, and he of course gives that to his lovely followers. Omar, would you like to talk about your own alignment?
So my alignments, it's actually a funny one. I never tried an alignment. What I like to do is I like to go in, play a character, and then feel it out. So I would say Dieter is more long. No. Neutral.
No.
Or neutral good, I would say.
I would honestly put up an argument of chaotic. There's a lot of like
Yeah.
interesting areas that tie into.
He also keeps saying that he's on his evil arc,
Yeah,
but he's not really doing anything evil. He's just being chaotic.
It's a minor inconvenience. It's like one of those things where we're waiting for the evil arc to be, oh my god, Dieter burned down his city, and instead it's like someone's eating dinner and they like reach for the soul and like the whole thing comes off and they're like, no!
He's like, I'm in my evil arc.
Yeah, you read about the time.
I really pranked that guy.
No, I really showed him.
I think Dieter just doesn't really understand evil.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he thinks he's an evil person for
He's
doing
going
it.
to lose it when he finds out about modern day evil. Like the evil 80 years ago was jaywalking. The things they're doing now are just absolutely insane.
He's very much out of touch.
Savant.
I also went into my character not having an alignment picked out, because when I was playing, like when I first started playing, maybe my first couple characters, I had an alignment picked out, but then when I would play them and the scenarios that I would be in and the people I was around, it wouldn't always line up. So he pitched an idea starting with this campaign, or the ending of our last campaign, where he was just like, don't pick an alignment, just play it out and I'll give it to you eventually. So that's how I've been doing it now.
And it's been working.
But I would guess that Savant is probably more like a true neutral at this point.
He really is. I will say that when it comes to Savant and being a character in his position where, you know, the world views him as this literal boogeyman, and then you have yourself playing this character, which is like, you know, 6'3", muscular, sword-wielding man, two swords, one of which looks like the scariest bone saw you've ever seen. You know, people see him walk into a tavern and they're like whispering, they're like, I heard he made a man eat his own eyeball, and like another guy's just like, I heard he cut his own umbilical cord with his teeth, and then he goes
And then I come
outside.
up and I'm like, hey, bro, what's up?
No, not just that, but like you're
Walk
like
up to your
crying
horse.
in front of your horse, you know, you're like, I'm gonna miss you so much, like the emotional connection to animals.
He has
and
a
just,
pet
like,
horse. I have cried over that pet horse
Yeah.
many times, in and out of character.
he has a soft side, definitely. So yeah, I would definitely say true neutral. Definitely a quality that is preserved in the character themselves rather than the outlook from those around them. Go ahead and hit it into the next one. You get the spacebar privilege. So let's roll. We can do this a variety of different ways. There are
There's
six.
and we got 3 people.
We got 6 lovely boxes, and we got a lot of dice, and we're really trying to roll some dice. Not those ones,
Not
those are
just
6. If you don't feel pressured, but if you want to come up and roll for a stat, we will give you some dice. We're completely genuine, you know, whatever gets you guys started, and just pick the numbers. It's really, all you have to do is, so we have a variety of different
5 dice.
6-sided dice. You just gotta roll 4 of them, and then we'll explain the rest
Pick
of
your
them.
favorite.
6,
Do not be shy. We do not bite,
5.
but we might shock you.
Hey, you stole that.
I did steal that. A lovely panelist came up with that earlier, and it really sold me.
Yeah, did you bossy?
Anyone wants to come up? Again, no pressure. We will also roll all of them. Dice.
So
are-
you roll 4, and then you'll drop the lowest one. That's how we'll come up with one
So
of the
1,
stats.
2, 3, 4. Read me those numbers.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wow.
Good one. Alright.
6,
12,
4.
16.
So 16.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna write down roll 16.
So the highest stat you can roll is an 18.
Correct.
3, 6.
Did you have a favorite on the dice? That one? That's all you want.
Sorry, we don't have a bag.
That's all you
Yeah,
need?
yeah.
Do you want
You
you
got
want a
pockets.
bag? Good, let's take that in there.
Roll to your heart's content,
Or until we fill out this character.
or until which is 5 more times.
Drop a 1.
Alright, 10. That's baseline.
Gotcha.
Nothing negative about it.
Nothing bad at all.
And then I'll leave this just because we need 4. And then I'll give you. Hmm? Oh, yeah, you pick your one. That's right. There you go. There's the set for you.
You got something.
Alright, so you'll roll all 4 of these.
Get an 18. Let's see it.
Come on. Big money, no whammies. Oh.
That's a great sign, gang. Thank you.
8, 11.
11. There we go.
Hey,
10.
better than 10.
Nine.
And then did you have a favorite of those 3? About that one?
I think I have another set of dice. So we can go out another D6.
Alright, and then Vince, Omar, Sid, you guys wanna?
Yeah,
roll
I have the
around?
worst luck. I want to do it.
Yeah.
How far actually in
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was a
16.
great. That's a good roll. Yeah, that was a great opening roll.
Oh, I do. Oh, I want my baby metal dice.
You got it? Okay.
Yes.
Then there you are.
Of course.
Right.
Baby metal knives.
Baby metal. Wrong one. Okay. Oop, that didn't happen.
This is where the projector would came in handy, guys.
Got
We
to.
got 5, 4, 3, so 12.
Woohoo.
I'll roll. I'm gonna do the Omar method.
Let's go.
Oh, that's-
Yeah.
That's a 1.
That's a 1. Wait, can I get 3?
Ooh.
Hey.
Okay.
A 9.
So while they're rolling up numbers, what I'm essentially doing is I'm taking what we've provided
Wow,
so
that
far,
actually-
which is of
wait,
course
that's
the race being a tiefling, the class being a rogue, and the
It was
background
upside
being a
down.
soldier.
It only goes up
And
to
I'm
6.
filling in the different qualities that come with them. So for instance, with a tiefling, I already explained, they have resistance to fire, they speak the language known as infernal. With a rogue, they get various, 13, thank you. They get various different traits such as expertise, meaning that they'll be good at various skills, if not the best of said skills, which we will of course talk about later. And they also get something known as thieves' tongue, which is a secret language that's only spoken amongst other thieves. It's almost like being a Freemason, essentially. Finally, the first feature that you'll be getting for a rogue is called sneak attack. So using their advantage and using their ability to hide and blend in, or having an enemy be distracted, they will then be able to sneak up on their opponent and deal a little bit extra damage. So it was 16, 10, 11, 13, 14. What was the 6th one?
Last one, what?
I
Last
said
one
the last
14.
I thought that was 14.
One before that was 13. So what'd you get? Oh, okay, we still have one more. Okay,
Yeah.
my bad.
I guess so.
I was rushing.
Yeah. 14 again.
Okay, so we have very good stats
Stats,
all around.
Yay.
So
What's
what?
the 9?
There was a 10. I think it was a 9.
9.
So what we were basically doing right there was rolling for our skills, our stats. Sorry. With our stats, there are different features and characteristics of the character, either physically in terms of, like for instance, their strength, how strong they will be, you know, how hard they can hit something, dexterity, how fast they are, you know, how quick they can hit something, constitution, which is essentially, you know, how well they can digest something, or you know, what if they got poisoned, or what if they got sick, you know, how quickly they can recover from that. Intelligence is how smart you are. It's typically with book smarts or, you know, knowledge that's acquired through skill and craft. Wisdom is more trade-based. That is, street smarts is the best way I can describe it. It's things such as, you know, your survival skills, your natural instincts, being insightful, almost like a philosopher's stat, if you will. And then charisma is how you project yourself, you know, being able to present, not being able to present, you know, traits like that. So with these numbers we now have, we can then fill it into those little boxes and really help flesh out the character in terms of what they can do stat-wise. So again, with a rogue, they are typically, you know, very sneaky. Maybe dexterity is something you might want to look into, you know, keeping them very stealthy, especially with a 16. Or perhaps maybe this isn't a very stealthy character. Maybe this is someone that's intentionally not stealthy. Maybe that's where we put the 9. You know, maybe they're like trying to sneak up on the enemy and they step on a rake and they fall back and they land on the cat. The cat goes and yells at the dog starts barking. And the whole time, the person they're trying to hunt is just completely fast asleep. It's just that natural luck that they have that's getting them through it. So what did we want to do? We have the 16 to start off with. Did we want to put that in maybe their strength, their dexterity, their constitution? A lot of different words to go with. I would put it anywhere.
I think it'd be funny if they're like horrible at being stealthy, but incredibly buff.
Yeah.
So they're like underestimating, and then they just like.
So their way of sneaking is killing everyone, basically.
Yeah.
No witness.
They don't
No
need
witnesses.
to sneak. If
No
everyone's
witnesses.
dead, you don't need to sneak.
So in that case, put the 9 in the
So in that case, we'll put the 16 in strength and the 9 in dexterity. So again, they're kind of tripping over themselves.
This is a great
This
They
is
have,
how
a,
bad.
they have a plan B.
They do have a
Always
fun.
have. That's their sword.
There's also, of course, our first 14. Do we want to have maybe that, because of how they've been raised, maybe how they've grown, they've had like this natural integrity that's formed inside them. Maybe they, you know, maybe they've been poisoned so many times that they're just like, okay, I'm used to it at this point. You know, I've failed so many missions. Or maybe they're actually really smart. You know, maybe they're actually very, very bright, but they can't really plan things out. They really can't execute things well. Maybe they've been well versed in the crime syndicates that they're in. Maybe something like that. You're good. So yeah, any of those numbers we will fill in. So 14, if we want to put that maybe in their constitution, in their charisma.
I think.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Charisma, 14. And really quick, tieflings are actually naturally charismatic, so we put the 14 in that box, and we'll be able to add +2 to that for being a tiefling. So that actually raises it up to a 16 total. So 216, that's really good for a character, especially at level 1. We do have a couple more numbers to deal with. We have another 14, we have an 11, we have a 13. So where do we want to put those ones? We have constitution, intelligence, and wisdom.
I think as a soldier background, it'd probably be a little more wise than intelligence. That's just in my mind.
Like a 14 in the...
Yeah, they have more life experience than like book smarts.
Absolutely. And then we finally have the 11 and the 13. And with all these numbers being said, 10 is typically an average. 10 is like a layman. They are very much like a commoner. Anything lower than that is going to be considered, you know, lesser or maybe a bit weaker, maybe not so bright, maybe not so wise. So currently, like everything being said, they're a bit ahead of the curve. It's just that they're kind of tripping over the feet sometimes. So do we want to make them more like brawny, much more, you know, able to be subjected to, you know, sickness and illness, or do we want to make them a bit smarter? Put that in Constitution. And then, similarly to how we buffed up the charisma by +2, we will buff up the intelligence by +1 because tieflings are naturally smart. So our stats in total, what we're looking at is a 16 for strength, a 9 for dexterity, a 13 for constitution, a 12 for intelligence, a 14 for wisdom, and a 16 for charisma. Overall, not bad stats.
We unintentionally min-maxed the Paladin. What happened?
Well, we made a rogue.
We made a
Yeah,
rogue.
we made a rogue.
The other thing that's kind of interesting about this is, I mean, sometimes you really are like, man, why couldn't I have gotten to all 18s? And for one thing, it's statistically very unlikely. But also, having lower stats can cause for really interesting interactions in a campaign. Do you guys have maybe some similar examples of that? I mean, I have one off the top of my head for someone, but...
One of my first characters I played with Israel in the one shot, it was a kobold named Shrek. And he actually had a -8 in strength, I think, which is a -1 to all strength rolls. So I was trying to lift a boulder off my buddy who got crushed, and I couldn't do it, so he just bled there and died. And he ran away.
He couldn't
get it. He was too small.
One of the members of the campaign early on, when we were rolling for stats, for the most part, everyone got some pretty solid stats overall. One of our players, he rolled and got the lowest number, period. He got a 6. Not total, but like he got a 6. And it was a question of, okay, where am I going to put this while still having an optimal character? So he decided to put it in his charisma. So we have essentially drawn out a 7-8 foot tall stone man who could ignite his hair into fire, like full on flaming mane, a big bushy beard of fire, able to turn his limbs into like a shield and a hammer, absolute tank, but he has no charisma. He just can't talk to anyone. He takes everything very literally. One of the jokes we had early on was actually put the 6 into intelligence. So when the party meets him for the first time, maybe there's something that goes on, maybe an explosion happens, or maybe a building's on fire, and then you see this man walk out, and he's covered in flames, and he's covered in brimstone and ash, and he's holding like a child in his hands, and he sets them down, and he's posing there all brave and heroically, and everyone's like, wow, how did you do that? And he looks down and he goes, I'm on fire! He starts freaking out. He has no idea, but naturally he's able to endure it. So it's one of those things that despite maybe having some lower rolls, it can turn into something very enjoyable or rewarding.
Turn into
You want to?
In one of my campaigns, the very first campaign I joined, at the time we had 4 party members, and we all had 8 charisma. So we went the entire campaign not being able to talk ourselves out of any situation. Don't do that. If you're all going to have the same lowest stat, just stop right there. Rethink your life.
You need someone.
Yes.
You need the one. The one thing that I was going to say, kind of on the other end of having kind of a higher stat, was the first character I ever made for Wisconsin, who was this huge, shredded Goliath barbarian. But he actually had fairly high charisma and very high dexterity. So he was this huge guy, but I would get crazy rolls for stealth. So you would just see this 7-foot guy just sneaking past all these guards and everything, and they'd be like, they really don't see that guy right there?
One of the best moments ever, hands down, was we had 2 party members in the cast. So one of them was he was a noble trying to keep his profile on the low. He was always wearing a hood, kind of shrouding himself. And he's very easy to blend into a crowd. You wouldn't really notice him stand out. They go to a bazaar, which had been occupied by military forces that they were on the run from. They were actually, fugitives, and they didn't want to be noticed in the crowd. So of course, the noble, he dons his hood, gets kind of low, begins to interact with common folk. And so when I asked for the party, I'm like, all right guys, make these stealth checks. He fails it, but then we have this 8-foot tall man just in the middle of the crowd, and no one bats an eye. And his face is plastered on wanted posters, and he's a war general who has been known for committing high treason.
I think I even said to somebody next to me, they ought to get that guy.
Yeah,
You're just a pillar.
Yeah, right.
One of the funniest parts was quite literally when you said they need to get that guy. One of the high-ranking generals opened a scroll and just had the perfect drawn image of the same man in the crowd, and no one batted an eye. No one knew it was him. It's kind of like
someone caught me eventually.
Someone did.
It was actually the lord of the military organization that had taken over, Lord Falder. Yeah. He was coming out to give a speech, and pretty much came out, was about to start, and pulled out a sword, was like, that's the guy. And then everyone was like, oh my god, he's right here.
And as you were saying about how the character is very dexterous, how they're very quick and able to do some very ridiculous things. There was a point where, since the bazaar is occupied by military forces, they of course put up walls and gates, and they really made it so nothing gets in, nothing gets out without them wanting to. So close the gates, don't let them escape. So you have the man run up, and he looks at this wall, and he looks at the gate in front of him. And what do you do, Vince? What do you do?
So what actually happened was I got to the gate, and I realized that there was me and one of my party members, but my party member got a knife thrown into their back, and they went unconscious. And so, Porgus Comper, the way he was a very prideful character. So he thought very highly of himself, probably way too high. But sometimes it worked out, sometimes it paid off. So he ran back, he grabbed his party member, and then he proceeded to run towards the wall and say, I can jump over it. And just kept repeating that, like, I could just jump over this wall. And when it came time and Israel was like, go make a check, I rolled a natural 20. So I just cleared this wall, and the guards didn't even chase me because they're like, that guy just jumped over it. Like, what's even the point at that point?
He won.
So it was absolutely probably one of the most memorable times of the campaign period. I mean, this is at least like 3 years plus back now, and we're still able to remember just like the faintest details about it, which really can go to show you like how crazy these little numbers can really make a story. During this, I was actually fortunate enough to fill in a few of the features of the character sheet, which is actually going to be the next part we're actually going to get into right now. We filled this out so you guys don't have to. Yeah, we're rolling. It's crunching numbers. Is this deductible? No, it is not. I'm sorry. The number crunching part of it isn't difficult, but it's long and it's boring, it's tiring, and it's best done if someone's telling a story while someone else does it for you. It is a process that is a lot of looking through the book and finding charts that correspond with certain aspects and elements. You have to go back and go, okay, my tiefling can do this, but because I'm a rogue, I can do this, and then I put this here, and then this number equals this. It's a lot. It really is, especially for your first time. There's different DMs that have different strategies for introducing numbers and modifiers to certain things. But typically what's best is to just go really step by step and kind of flesh out what modifiers are. Modifiers are when you're in a situation that requires, for example, I'm the DM, I say, you guys are in front of a caravan of guards and they think you're wanted criminals. I need you to give me a stealth check. They roll the 20-sided die and then they add a modifier, or in certain cases might have to subtract certain things. So in the case of this character, what did you just roll right?
I rolled an 11.
So an 11. So if they were trying to sneak away from a caravan with the stats we're looking at right now, that would be a 10. So depending on how aware those guards are, it might end pretty poorly. Modifiers typically scale with certain sets of numbers. So for instance, because we have 16 in strength, we get a +3 to our strength-based rolls in those situations. So for instance, if I'm ever asking for a check that requires like someone to lift a heavy object, or maybe it's something like an arm wrestling contest, or something in that same vein, that would be the role it's doing.
So you can see what she's
Yeah,
talking
definitely
about.
visualize it. We were told we would have a prompter, so we're gonna use that. We called instant.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the only main difference between the one that I'm holding and the one you guys are using is I filled out the numbers right here for you guys, so that way it is a little bit more organized with our stats and what have you. There are certain qualities that become inserted based on, of course, your race, your class, and your background. And we're actually going to talk about those, I believe, right now. Skills, yeah.
Yeah. Here, hand me a paper so
Yeah, let's look at that.
read off.
Yeah.
So, there's nothing on.
No, there's a visual.
Okay, I'm just making sure. So as far as skills go, these are kind of the specific checks that you're going to make generally. Sometimes you might have to make, like just a base strength check, but oftentimes they're going to say, make an acrobatics check, which would be like, that's usually if you're trying to do something extra. If you're trying to do a backflip, you're going to have to make an acrobatics check. Animal handling, that's pretty much what it is. If you're trying to pet an animal, if you're trying to domesticate an animal, whatever you're trying to do, that would be animal handling. Arcana, that's just kind of your general sense of magic around you, being able to pick up on it. Athletics, that would be your average like swimming, climbing, jumping, anything like that. Deception, trying to deceive somebody, trying to trick them. History, that's just knowing about the world you're in as far as historical events, everything like that. Insight, that's a pretty common check that you would do. That's if your character would know something. or know another, if a non-playable character shows up, you can roll an insight check and be like, do I know this person? Intimidation, that's trying to intimidate someone, scare them into doing what you want them to do. Investigation, that would be investigation, if you're trying to figure something out, find clues. Medicine, that would be if you're trying to heal somebody and you don't exactly have like a spell to do it, like wrapping a wound or something like that. Nature, that's just kind of your general sense or knowledge of nature, being able to use plants and trees to your advantage. Perception, that's just the way you perceive the world, the things that you see, how well you catch on to them. Performance, that would be if you're doing any kind of singing, musical act, even just trying to like draw attention of a crowd, that would be performance. Persuasion, that's kind of the other side of the coin of intimidation, rather than trying to scare them, trying to just bargain with them or get them to join your side by talking to them. Religion, that's generally linked to your own character's faith and what they know about religion, if they follow a deity, things like that. Sleight of hand, that would be if you're trying to break into something, steal something, do something that requires finesse usually. Stealth, that's sneaking around, and survival is kind of just your general knowledge of surviving in the world.
The funniest part of survival is I was taught it two different ways. Survival in terms of prime caveman era, like striking stones together, making fire, all that good stuff. And it got summarized so much better to me when someone told me, yeah, it's like what a Boy Scout does. If you can get on a badge on like a Boy Scout lanyard, like that's all you need to know. If you can whittle, if you can start a fire, if you can sell cookies like no other, like dang, that's all there in survival.
That's such a good way to look at it.
No, it really is. In Savant actually, does he have proficiency in survival?
I think he does.
Yeah, I think he does. So again, having a character that's a natural savant, we'll have proficiency with those skills. What skills do you guys like typically enjoy, selecting for a character when given the chance?
I love on kind of stronger characters putting a lot into athletics because there's a lot of cool stuff you can do. For example, with my character Porgus Comper, he was very focused in strength, so athletics was very, very high for him. He had, I think, like a +9 to athletics by the time we got pretty far into the campaign, which, I could roll an 11 and technically it was a 20, so it made it a lot more fun.
Sid, primary skill you enjoy?
I personally like to be proficient in I like to deceive people.
Yeah.
Also perception. That's probably like the most useful one to have.
That's how you talk your way out.
Perception.
Oh, perception.
Yeah.
I thought you said deception.
You've been deceived.
I was deceived.
You made Savant. You said I want to do gaslight, gatekeep, guy boss. Guy boss. With the detail. Or just maybe in general, what do you like to do?
It depends on the character, but in general, I do like persuasion, or any charisma-based sort of thing. So persuasion or like intimidation or something like that. Stealth is always good to have, and insight I think is a funny one because you get the gist of people. So you can look at someone and be like, all right, I know this guy's a bum. I hate this guy.
I like to say that I vibe him out.
Yeah,
I'll
you
just do a
vibe
vibe check.
Yeah, no, I've had so many times at the table where I describe a character and sometimes they're correct and Sid will look at me and just go, I want to vibe check this guy. Probably my favorite interaction though, hands down, was one of the party members had met with a very honest, very hardworking southern chef who was a lizard folks. He's a lizard gentleman who wears like essentially Colonel Sanders attire, very soft-spoken, very sweet, who goes by the name of Jareth Smokehouse Hydrillis. He's a barbecue man. And when the party meets him for the first time, he's so kind and so sweet. He's like, well, I really do care for him. I will tell you that. And like the whole party's just like, we don't trust
this guy is terrible.
This guy is onto something. And with a high enough roll, I just went, no, he's genuinely like who he appears to be. He's just, all he does is grill. All he does is barbecue. So what we have right now for our skills, the natural skills given to the character. So for instance, with their soldier background, they're naturally athletic, which makes sense. Having to serve in a military, you're naturally going to be athletic or have to train for it. And intimidation, it's the status, it's the title. You see, again, a pretty strong-looking individual with a status in the military who goes currently by so bad, you're gonna probably be intimidated from time to time. With that being said, the class features, or the class skills I should say specifically, rogues are essentially jacks of all trades when it comes to what they do and what they do well. So they typically focus on many different areas of like a trade or craft, and they go from there. So for instance, the skills that a rogue can pick, we can pick 4 of them. So if you guys just all want to pick one, and then we'll decide amongst ourselves what they'll get. There are acrobatics, deception, insight, investigation, perception, performance, persuasion, sleight of hand, and stealth. And that's a lot of stuff. So what I'll do is I'll make it really simple. I'll start naming them off again. If something stands out, just tell me when to stop. Okay, start from the top. Acrobatics, deception, insight, intimidation, investigation. Oh, we already have intimidation, sorry. Investigation, perception. Try again. Investigation, perception, performance. Ooh, a performer. All right, take it back from the top. Acrobatics, deception, insight, investigation. Ooh, deception. Okay, very nice, very nice.
Insight?
Okay, we'll go with insight, absolutely. So they're able to deceive without being detected that they're being deceitful. They also can tell if they're being lied to. Maybe it's something that they've acquired over a certain amount of time. They're also a bit of a performer. Maybe they can juggle. Probably not with this character build. But maybe they do like feats of strength. Maybe they have like a booth set up and they show off how strong they are. They like put like a watermelon device and just and they crush it right there.
Arm wrestling.
I see you're pogging. What's up?
No, I'm just imagining like elaborating on this character. Just imagining like a sword swallower.
Oh.
Yeah, or something like that.
Thank God
so they can like juggle, and then it's like, oh hey, I'm gonna pull this out of my throat. Bam.
So do you guys want to pick a skill as well? Stealth. Oh,
Yeah, let's
we-
give this character like something.
Stealth.
Let's be a little nice.
We went with we went with the mindset of them, not being too stealthy, but overall they have
They can
alright
try.
stealth. So now what I'm doing is I'm taking the smaller numbers that were provided with our skills and then just lining up where they correspond. So you'll notice that in small parentheses it says, for instance, at the top, acrobatics, it's a dex-based stat, so it's tied to your dexterity. So right off the bat, if you ever want to do a backflip, you're gonna get a -1 for it. You have not been taught how to do a backflip. I am so sorry for that. And then you just kind of go down the list and then fill in from there. Omar, if you want to go ahead and hit the next slide, which is of course rounding out the character. You don't have to hit the next one. Rounding out the character, essentially what we mean by this is putting it all together in terms of, how do they look? How do they sound? Maybe the way they interact with other characters. That's definitely a big one. Sometimes it's really entertaining to have just like a really large character that is looking down very menacingly and intimidatingly, and then it comes down to it, accidentally spill your drink on this guy, and then they turn and they go, hey, come on man, what are you doing? Like, what's up with that? And you're like, you're so intimidated by the biceps and the tattoos and the missing eye that you don't see. So if there's any, maybe like, for instance, we have a tiefling, so naturally already gonna have like a different color skin in terms of maybe red, purple, blue, anything like that could be interesting. What?
I said whatever.
Yeah, no,
whatever
whatever
color.
you want.
Really.
I've heard green tiefling, so maybe is there a color you guys maybe want to go with? Yeah, we're sticking with red.
We'll go with red.
We're sticking with red. Do you want to? Yeah, you use a pen because it's that. Okay, so we got ourselves a red tiefling. Do we want to? How old did we want to make them? Did we want to make them, like more mature, maybe like in their 50s and 60s?
What's the lifespan of a tiefling?
That's an important one, but also keep in mind, maybe it's just one of those environments that it's more applied, to human level. So maybe it just kind of scales. It's definitely, we typically races will vary, but just for the sake of convenience, we will just gauge it based on average human lifespan. So are they very young? Are they very old? Maybe they were drafted at a young age and then had to progressively grow into sort of like a veteran now. What do we guys think?
Let's go with 40.
Okay, then they're 40s.
Okay.
Middle age.
Middle age, 43. There you go.
We'll go 43.
4 plus 3 is 7. Lucky number right there. All right. Next up, we got height.
We got height.
How tall do we want this guy to be, or character in general?
Even 5.
What was that?
Even 5.
Just 5 foot.
5 foot. All right.
It's the horns too. I can imagine like the horns is what puts them
They
over.
add a point to them.
It's like 4'3".
Yeah, absolutely. Weight.
Right, so next we have weights.
If we want to scale it, we know 5 feet tall. Scale that up for you, no problem. Eyes. Eyes are honestly kind of a fun one because you could say like, maybe they have blue eyes, maybe they have green eyes. I've had characters that have like different color eyes. That's always a fun one. Sid, do you have a preference when it comes to eye color?
a character that I'm currently making for Pathfinder of all things.
Oh,
I'm actually playing a kitsune, and I want them to be like, I want them to see the future, so I have them blind in one eye. So the other one is like a fox eye, like a fennec fox, and then the other one is like purple. It's like the same as like the other eye, but just like it kind of looks like a galaxy in there. So
purple and orange.
Purple and orange.
Purple and orange. And again, with qualities like that, it's like, okay, what happened to their eye? You know, how did this happen? Is it based on birth? Is it based on their time in the service? You know, maybe something like that happened.
Magical curse.
Maybe magical curse. I actually mentioned eyes because the character that you had early on with Marauder, they had an eye patch, and one of the things was like, we knew we wanted to have an eye patch for the character, but we're like, what happened? You know, how did they lose the eye patch? Or how they lose the eye, sorry. And it turned into a really interesting one where they saved a comrade's life and they took an arrow just right to the face, and now it's that permanent scar that reminds them. I remember one of the running gags for Shrek, when he returned, you know, completely fine, normal kobold, and then when he comes back, he has an eye patch. Everyone's like, oh wow, what happened to Shrek? And then you see him again, and the eye patch is on the other eye, and his eye's completely fine. And there's instances where, you know, he has it switching back and forth, he has it covered with both eyes, maybe he has it not at all, and he has like that backwards, you know, so.
in the middle.
Yeah. Finally, we got with skin, hair color. You know, that would be an interesting one.
Maybe no hair.
Maybe they're bald.
Maybe they're bald.
Could be bald.
Horns, yeah, I mean.
Are we making a bald
Nice
character?
horn. I feel like a
Maybe
nice
an afro?
I've never been a bald character before.
I would think because of the military, they might have like a shaved head.
Yeah.
A buzz cut.
Okay.
Yeah, there we go.
Sure, we'll go buzz cut.
Yeah, that's just where my brain goes right with
I flick into the buzz cut.
my head. So veering away from maybe what they physically look like, and the interesting part is we actually haven't found an identity for them yet. Do we want to make them, you know, male, female, non-binary? You know, what appealed to us?
I mean, it looks like it's a male. It appears to be male.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
No problem. Okay, got that. You put dude. We're gonna round it out even more. Traits. Who wanted to tackle traits?
Oh, that was me.
Go for it.
Okay.
Tell me about your traits.
Traits. So typically, okay, on this paper, I tend to just put in like one or two like things for each like section. So for personality traits, that's just like your little quirks, like whatever fun things you want to tie into your character that makes them them. So I didn't write this down for Savant, but he's essentially just like, I play him as like a jack of all trades. Like he'll pick something up and he'll just get good at it. And you can really just make it whatever you want, really. I mean, in the book, it has like an example where you could roll if you wanted to, but really, unless your DM is not great, then like they'll have you stick with that. But like you can just pick whatever you want.
So currently we're looking at a 5 foot tall, relatively muscular tiefling male with shaved head and a purple and yellow eye. Do we want to make them, you know, much more like approachable? Do we want to make them maybe one of those things where maybe they're timid in nature? Like that might be one of their quality traits. We'll go right to you guys.
A shy soldier.
A shy
soldier.
Shy. So we're sticking to the idea of just like, you know, absolute beefcake, and then someone like bumps into them and they're like, I'm so sorry.
I would say shy in a very like short-spoken way,
Okay.
like very to the point.
Oh, to the point.
Yeah, very to the point. Yeah.
For sure. That's a pretty nice trait to have. Maybe it's just been like so much yelling and so much violence that surrounded them that it's now turned them into much more of a shy, you know, kind of closed off individual. Maybe that's one of their traits. Yeah. Honestly, sometimes you just gotta put like some trauma into a character and then it writes itself. I mean, the table's full of it up. I'm looking at the character.
You're talking about like the game or?
Ideals.
Oh yeah. Ideals. So ideals are kind of what your character. I mean, the best way to say it is what your character is about. What you're kind of going for. I think ideals always ties back into alignment. Because it kind of is what you're trying to put out into the world. For example, like my character Lockday, he's a wealth paladin who likes to, spread the wealth. So he's a very generous person. He thinks of himself last, in a sense, is the best way to put it. But usually just what you want to put out into the world is what your ideals are.
And with that being said, that will also go very well with the alignment so far. So we have a chaotic good, so they're trying to do their best, but might not always be, the well executed, kind of tripping over themselves. they have a tendency to be shy or avoiding confrontation, what would be maybe one of the goals that they would like to have? Like, what would maybe one of the ideals that they hold true to themselves be? Any off the top of our heads?
Shiny weapon.
Shiny weapon. So they at this point they are so they're so nervous and they're kind of worried, and they see these generals that are holding these great victorious battle axes and these swords and these javelins, and they're here like holding like a dagger. And they're like, I need one of those. That's what they need. Their belief is based on more of a materialistic goal. It's more of linked to title or reputation or status, maybe, especially with that military. That is a very good one. I like that. Bonds. Bonds can be, for instance, when we first started the campaign, I sat you two eggheads together, and I went, how do you guys feel about being best friends? And what did you guys say?
I said yes.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of a fun one where you can have bonds in the party. Typically, when you're working in a collaborative experience, you form bonds in the party. That just kind of happens. Or maybe you don't. Maybe there's a party member that you're like, we don't see eye to eye, so we're not gonna mesh well. It also falls on the DM, making characters that you'll want to form a bond with. Maybe like hold a grudge against, your villains, your heroes, your fellow companions, having characters that leave an impact on you that will have you be reminding you later on. I would like to think in the case of this tiefling, maybe it's like an older, veteran type who maybe she, I'm gonna go with she on this one. She kind of appealed more to the softer side of this tiefling. Maybe she was much more compassionate. Maybe she showed him like, it's not all about violence. Maybe there's other ways of things. And maybe her weapon were her words. Maybe she was a bard. There we go. Easy play. And so now he's trying to avoid this. He's trying to figure out, okay, like despite having what I'm taught, the world's trying to tell me I need a sword. I need to go fight. I need to go to battle. Masculinity, testosterone. Like all that good stuff. And finally, flaws. Flaws with the character. Omar.
So flaws to me, I think, help your character in a big role play sense. So maybe you're not good at something, or maybe your character can't even read. So you can really play into that.
Clumsy.
So, clumsy. Yeah, like this guy definitely is clumsy with a -1 in dexterity. Maybe he's not good at stealth.
A lot of these skills were taught to him probably in the military, and then like when he's trying to remember, like it's a lot of clash. Maybe it's not necessarily that like he's naturally like slower in terms of physicality, but he's always stepping over himself. He's like, okay, I can top this thing, but now I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to look like this, but that's not who the character is. It's who they're trying
Could
to
be an overthinker.
become. Yeah, some of my favorites flaws can come up at like the spur of the moment. Last session with the bears, that was kind of interesting.
Right. Yeah. A fun thing that I like to do is I don't usually fill out that section. I wait until I play, and I wait for moments to come up and create. Something. For example, in the last session we just had, I revealed that my character was terrified of bears, which is just like a totally random thing that I just decided in the moment. I was like, I think that makes sense. And so, there's no background on it for them yet, but he's scared of bears.
The other thing I remember with the Ludwig character, who was always rambling and going on about different things, the group was going into town one day to get some supplies. They needed to get some food because they were going on a long day's travel. And so Ludwig tells them, look, would you be a DA and pick up some trail mix at the corner store, but make sure it exclusively does not contain cashews. I'm highly allergic to cashews. But I'll pick around them if need be. But I wouldn't want to live. And things like that.
It goes into way more detail about how
he
found out because he ate one when he was really young, and he thought that he just choked on it, so he continued to eat them and thought he just choked on them every time until he realized it was actually allergic.
It just would not sit well with my stomach, my throat, or my neck. It got all puffy and swollen. I don't know what it was. A real pain.
Oh, he also tasked us with getting him chapstick, and he does not have lips.
Everyone figured that out far too late. Being a turtle that he is, he has a beak. So he said, and being a jazz performer, he had a trumpet, which again had its own kind of questions of how he played a trumpet. So he said, would you all be a DA and give me some chapstick? And it wasn't until they finally got into the heart of the trades and in front of vendors and tables when I think it was.
I asked for Loctite Goldman. He went up to a merchant and he was like, do you by chance have lip balm or wax or something for lips? And one of my party members was like, he doesn't even have lips. And at that point, Lockett was like, whatever, he asked for it, just get it for him.
Maybe a flaw is your character does not have lips. Maybe that's just something. No smooching, no smooching or anything like that.
No playing the trumpet.
No playing the don't say that. So yeah, it's actually kind of funny how that lines up because we're able to tie everything together now currently towards the end. The equipment that we're starting off with is, of course, that rusty dagger. They're trying to get a nice, like, immaculate, pristine weapon so they can really show themselves. They get a short bow and quiver with 20 arrows. And, maybe it's something along with that short bow. Maybe it's like every time they notch the arrow, especially since they have a low dexterity, it either, like, it misfires, or maybe it's just so old, it's like a hand-me-down, it snaps on them, they're like, they gotta pick up the pieces, they're freaking out in combat. Maybe that ties into the rogue element of things, where now that they're having to pick up these pieces, they're like, I gotta get out of here, they're hiding, and then they find their opportunity to finally strike, and that can showcase elements of the character that you'll enjoy. There are also different packs they can carry with supplies, depending on what experience you want to have. So you can pick, like, for instance, the burglar's pack. Maybe they're stealing from time to time. They're so just needy for this weapon. Maybe they'll do whatever it takes. Maybe not necessarily the best of things. Maybe delving more into that chaotic line and maybe wanting to sway a bit more neutral. Maybe they want to go find a lost ancient archaic blade in a cave or a cavern, with a Dungeoneer's pack. Or maybe it's out in the cloud cities or in molten depths with an explorer's pack, charting out realms that we haven't seen before. Those are all elements of your standard equipment that can transform a character from just like, I'm so bad Tyson, the tiefling soldier, to this just overall experience that grows and shapes not only in session but over time as well. That's definitely something you want to kick into effect. Or you can just make a kobold. That's always just not
a classic.
That's a classic. I mean, nothing beats rock. You always go rock and rock, paper, scissors. But with that is genuinely all we have in terms of character sheet. We were really lucky. You guys picked a martial class. You didn't have to explain spells or cantrips or anything like that. Most of us don't play spellcasters. That is definitely an element to it. So to tie everything all together with one, I put quotes around this, so bad Tyson. Maybe that's a nickname that they've been given after so many failed instances of tripping over their own feet, or I shot the lieutenant in the shoulder again. Oh, he's gonna kill me. Something like that. They are, of course, a roguish tiefling, not necessarily by choice, but now they're just trying to, I don't want them to notice me, kind of veering off into alleys or different parts. I don't think now is the best time for that, always kind of timid, trying to, stay closed off. A bit more materialistic. They're like, crummy dagger. Hey, what does that guy have right there? You're always looking for a nice sword. You know what? I'll take it.
Deceptive.
Very deceptive. They are extremely strong, so if they want it, they can have it.
Give me that.
Hand it over. They kind of puff up the chest a little bit. Maybe it's a character they play. Maybe it's just like one of those things where they see a sword over there. And come on.
They got the performance aspect.
They do. They fake it till they make it.
Hey, give me that.
Yeah!
Oh my gosh.
I can't believe that actually worked. Right. They're really breathing on that. They're able to take some damage. They're pretty smart, much more wise than they are, have some charisma to go with it. Able to sneak, able to deceive, able to read a room or a situation. Maybe it's a thing where, huge tavern, it's always that classic tavern scene. People drinking and cheering and celebrating, there's some heroes at the table. And Tyson goes, I don't know about this one, guys. I'm gonna sit this one out. I'll see you in the back. Have fun. I thought you were.
Oh, no.
Okay. They're a bit clumsy, so when they're like, I'll see you guys in the back, trips over something, falls over a trash can, falls down like, oh no, this 20-foot staircase.
Or like when they're entering the tavern, maybe they trip, and so everyone's just like,
it goes quiet.
Yeah.
It's just like.
But with their good performance, and they did a roll, and
Oh
then
yeah,
they were just
right.
It's a Willy Wonka, like where he stumbles and he catches himself. No, just like that. And so proudly with their rusty dagger and the wisdom of the bard before them, they go out into the world seeking out new adventure and potentially a new shiny blade. And with that, we managed to maybe go over a bit in time, so we apologize, but we also did manage to make a character pretty efficiently. So thank you guys for joining us on that. If we had anything else we wanted to add before we, call it quits.
This character just, it's reminding me of like a really bad Spider-Man.
I hope you guys are
Like
ready.
if Peter Parker were Spider-Man.
I hope you're
So,
ready for
Spider-Man without the mask.
I hope you guys are ready for folk hero tales of so bad Tyson in the
Please.
campaign.
Please.
You're like, you guys are just gonna hear about this guy and just go crazy.